Street Smarts, straight talk for kids, teens, and parents with Detective J.J. Bittenbinder is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by Motorola, a worldwide provider of two-way radios, cellular telephones, pagers, and semiconductors. At Motorola, quality means the world to us. And the Freddie Mac Foundation, committed to helping children, youth, and families by focusing attention on their needs and supporting positive solutions. Please welcome Detective J.J. Bittenbinder.
Thank you very much. My name is J.J. Bittenbinder, and I'm a policeman. I'm not a TV cop. I'm not a Hollywood cop. I'm a real homicide detective, and I've seen it all. I've been a homicide detective for 16 years. Today we're going to talk about 3 areas of concern for the families across the nation. We're going to talk about drugs. We're going to talk about gangs. And we're going to talk about street safety for children. Now, my role in this is I'm a lifeguard. You are my swimmers, and you're in the water off the beach. And out in the back, I've got the sharks. And if I cannot keep the sharks off of my swimmers, I have to take my swimmers out of the water. But if I can teach my swimmers how to keep the sharks away themselves, then you can go anywhere you want and swim. This is called empowerment through education, and that's what this is all about. Some of the things I'm going to talk about are rough. They're shocking. But I'm not telling them to you because they're shocking. I'm telling them to you because they're true. The first thing I want to tell you, there are no absolutes. Nothing works all the time. There is no procedure or no method that is going to make you safe in every case. There just isn't. You're going to have choices to make. And that's what this is all about. Choices. Making the right choices. Let me tell you a story. True story. A car pulls in from another town, pulls into this one town, and they go into the parking lot of a closed fast food restaurant. In the parking lot, there were 3 guys who were standing there. And as this car pulled up, the 3 guys in the car yelled out, "Hey, are you in the whatever gang it was? Are you in?" And those 3 guys looked at one another and they said, "Yeah, we're in that gang." And the 3 guys in the car says, "Can you tell us where we can get some marijuana?" And the 3 guys says, "Yeah, come on, we'll get in the car with you. We'll tell you where you can get some." Those 3 guys got into the car. Actually, there were 4 of them by then. Got into the car with these 3 guys from the other town. And they took them up and down the streets, and they took them into an alley. And after they took them out of the car, they supposedly to go buy some marijuana. They took them out of the car. Then they pulled the knives on them. One by one, they took them back to that car. And one by one, they killed them. They stabbed him to death. One guy was stabbed 52 times, 26 times in the face. During the statements, one of these young lads said that while he was stabbing this one, he said, the guy looked up at me and he says, "Don't stab me anymore, man. I'm dead already." Now, that's the end of that story. But here's what we got. We got 4 on death row and 3 in the graveyard. Who won? Who won? Nobody wins. Nobody wins this. There are no winners. Okay. Safety for children. Okay. Now, I want you to understand that when we're talking about safety for children, we're talking about young children, older children, young adults. Now, I want you to know that these people out there do not all look like, you know who I'm talking about, the guy with the knives in his hand, you know who that is? See, that's right. They don't all look like him. They do not all look like the Penguin. They do not all look like Bluto. They don't look like the Joker. They don't walk down the street with their collars up and their hats down looking like bad guys in the comic books. These guys who want to come up and touch you or have you touch them, they look like fathers, and they look like uncles, and they look like grandfathers, and they look like neighbors because they are fathers and uncles and grandfathers and neighbors. And that's who they look like. And they are not after your money. They want to touch you. They want to touch you or have you touch them. They take the lone child, or the child who is playing with a group but not really playing with the group. It's a lone child. Now, the way they do this is they ask questions, or they make promises, or they offer you something, and sometimes they offer different things to the older one and different things to the younger ones, and it goes like this. They ask a question. They'll ask something like, you know where the Smith people live? Do you know? And then I can't hear you. And then the little girl gets a little closer, and I can't hear you. Come a little closer. And she gets a little closer, and all of a sudden he's got a hold of her and he pulls her right through the window. Sometimes they offer you something. The older ones, they'll offer you money. The younger ones, they'll say, you want a piece of candy? They'll offer you something. If you're very young, sometimes they'll say, hey, look what I've got here. I got this little stuffed animal. Isn't this cute? Why don't you get my car, little girl? I'll give you this stuffed animal. And whatever works. They're trying to get you into that automobile. Sometimes they're going to say to you, they'll say something, they'll say like, you know, I lost my cat. I cannot find my cat. Would you help me find my cat? My cat, I think, is right down this gangway. Would you come with me and help me find my cat? And this little girl who loves cats, she says, okay. Wrong. We don't want you to do that. Sometimes they'll trick you. They'll say, you know, your mother's in the hospital. She says I should come and get you right away. Get in the car. We have to go to the hospital. We have to go right now. Now get in the car. He's lying, but he's trying to trick you. You can't do that. These guys lie to you. They'll say anything that they can and threaten or promise anything to get you into that automobile as fast as they can. Do not go. You got to have a plan. You got to know what you're to do. And I'll tell you what you are to do. You are to get out of there. No. Let's talk about one more thing. As you're running, before you start to run, I want you to remember this. I want you to drop the books. I want you to drop the books. Now, here's a scene that is repeated every September. The father stands in front of the young lady, and he says, young lady, I just spent $43 for these books. I don't want you to leave them on the bus. I don't want you to leave them at the library. I don't want them at Becky's house. I don't want them at Bobby's house. Where these books are, you better be, and where you are, these books better be. I want these books to be with you. And he just reinforced the wrong thing. Then I get the young lady who gets chased down the alley by this guy, and he pulls her panties down and he fondles her. And she's explaining to her father, she says, Daddy, I almost got away, but that book bag is so heavy. And the father's heart is breaking. He reinforced the wrong thing. That goof was not after that little girl for her history book, and he was not after her for her spelling homework. And as you as parents, when you go back there and those books are gone, that's okay too. Now the tough target is what I want you to be. I want you to be a tough target, and I want you to move out of there. Do not hesitate, just go. And if you're an older child and you see a younger child approached, I want you to say, hey, get out of there. Get out of there. Come with me. Get out of there. Do not let these people take anybody in your group, in your family. Do not let them take anybody into a car. You don't want that to happen. That's out there. I don't want you to even have a conversation with these people. Do not get into a conversation with them. As soon as they start to talk to you, get out of there. Leave. Now, flee is good, but where do you flee to? Run. You see what you can do right now at your age. You take those 3 quick running steps, and you're going full speed. You learn how, you do that now. You'll never, ever be able to do that again, but you can do that now. Bam, you're out of there. Now, that's what you got to do, but where do you run? Well, run to where there's people. Go to a fast food store. Get to a convenience store. Get where there are people. You get your knees in the breeze. Get out of there. Now, what this guy wants you to do, he wants to take you to a place that we call a secondary crime scene. He's going to make an approach in a public place, but he's going to take you to a more private place. He wants to take you down a hallway, wants to get you into a car, wants to get you into a van. He wants to take you to a place where he has more control. Why do you think he wants to take you to a place he has more control? He wants to touch you, wants to make you touch him. You're not going to do it. You don't have to do it. This is the way I explain it. If he is trying to touch you on an area that is normally covered by your bathing suit when you have your bathing suit on, that is always wrong. Always. Whether you're a boy or a girl. If he's trying to touch you on an area that is covered by your bathing suit, it's wrong. Even if you don't have the suit on, you know the areas I'm talking about. And if he wants you to touch him in an area that would normally be covered by his bathing suit, that's wrong. Sometimes there are other touches where somebody will come up and touch you on the shoulder, and you're not sure if that's right or wrong. Get away from them. You don't have to put up with that. Tell your mother or your father, somebody is touching me. Tell them. And if this guy touches you, if he takes you into some place and he touches you, and then he says to you, if you tell, I'm going to kill your mother and your father and your dog. He will threaten you. He will say whatever it is necessary to make you feel afraid, because he doesn't want you to tell. The reason he wants to make you feel afraid is because he's afraid that you are going to tell. Now, another thing he's going to say, he says, they won't believe you. You're going to tell, but they won't believe you. Well, I'm telling you right now, your parents will believe you. If you tell them somebody touched you, they're going to believe you. And tell them. And you tell them, you tell your mother and your father. You tell a teacher. You tell somebody you trust. And they will believe you. I also don't want you to take a shortcut down a gangway or down an alley if it's going to put you in a position where you're going into a place where there are no options for you. You can't get away. You can't run. I want you to go where the light is. I want you to stay safe. And that's what you do. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Predators walk with their head up and they're looking around, and the prey look at the ground. I want you to always think about trying to be tough.
One day I was walking to the store, and it was a very nice day out, and I was going back towards my house, and I decided to take a shortcut through the alley because the front door was locked. So I was walking back, and all of a sudden I noticed this guy following me. He was very menacing, very scary looking. So I started to walk a little bit faster. All of a sudden I heard him say, "Excuse me." I didn't want to answer him because I was already shaking. It already scared me. And he just stood there and he looked at me. And he made me shake, and I was so petrified. I couldn't believe he was doing this. I was so scared. He just stood there and he looked at me.
Another thing, you're out in the park, you have to go to the bathroom, you go to the washroom, a public washroom. If there's somebody hanging around your washroom, you go bring somebody with you. Either you tell somebody who's another child to come with you, an older brother or sister, your mother, the counselor, the teacher. You do not want to get into that bathroom. Always smart to be smart. I'll tell you something else. When you get on a bus, some of you travel alone. You get on the bus, you stand next to the driver. Or if the bus is empty, you say, "Okay, excuse me, Mr. Bus Driver, I'm traveling alone. I'm going to sit right over here. Would you call out when we get to Western Avenue, please?" And you sit down. And that's this guy's job. He's going to want to help you. I don't want you to sit by the window. I want you to sit by the aisle. If you're sitting next to the window, and some big guy sits down next to you, you can't get out. Now, if the bus is crowded, you stand right behind the bus driver, right around the corner, and you say, excuse me, I'm traveling alone. Can I stand here? And he knows what you're saying. He knows what that means. He's going to say, okay, just stand right there. Don't worry about it. You stand right here. You got to remember also that whatever happens, if he cons you, if he tricks you, if he bribes you, if he frightens you, whatever he does to get you to come down there and you let him touch you, or you touch him, it's still not your fault. Tell your mother anyway. It is not your fault. It is never your fault. You didn't ask for it. You just didn't know how to get out of it. Your parents will be able to tell you how to get out of it. Let's talk about one more thing here. I want to talk about crimes where one child is doing a crime on another child. Here's where we got a kid driving his bike. Guy came up to him with a gun and said, get off of the bike, give me the bike. He says no. When he started to run away, the guy with the gun shot him dead. And now I got one in jail and one in the graveyard. Who won? Nobody. That's right, they don't win. If the guy comes up and he's got a gun, give him the bike. I don't care what the bike costs. If they want your jacket, come out of the jacket. It's like the books. You're going to give it up. It's not worth dying for. It really isn't.
One of my friends had a bright blue bike. It was really nice, and you could do a lot of tricks on it. And right away, it caught their eye, so then they asked him if they could ride his bike. We didn't let him because we knew if we said yes, they would take it, and we'd never hear from him again. So we said no, and they asked him one more time. He said no again. So they got in a group, and they started talking, and one of my friends saw that they had a knife. And we panicked, because, you know, a knife, if they stabbed us or tried to do anything with us, we're going to have to fight back, and we don't want to make any enemies with them. So the next time they asked my friend, we said, fine, let him have the bike, and they took off, and we haven't heard from them since. If they have a weapon, let them have what they want, because it's not worth getting killed for.
Let me give you a couple of tips about being at home. It goes like this. When you're at home and the phone rings, and somebody says, can I talk to your mother? I don't want you to say, my mother's not home. You say, well, she can't come to the phone right now. That's fine. If they start asking you questions, don't answer. If they start talking to you, if they start asking you questions about your own individual person, you do not answer. The best thing to do is to have that answering machine on. The answering machine is good. I like the answering machine. If you are followed, if you're what we call latchkey kids. A latchkey kid is somebody who comes home, the mother and father are both working, the kid comes home, he's got his own key to the door. If you think you're being followed, run. Run to the fast food store, run to a convenience store. Do not let anybody follow you in. And once you get in that door, you make sure that door is locked behind you. That's very important. If somebody comes and knocks on the door and they try to get in, don't let them in. If somebody comes up to the door and knocks on the door and said that the repairman, they come to fix the sink, or they came to fix the stove, or they've come to do whatever they want to do, you don't let them in. If you are worried, you call 911, and you say to the man or the woman who answers 911, somebody is trying to get in the house, they said that they're the repairman, and I'm afraid. And whoever you talk to is going to send the police, and when they send the police is going to take care of this guy. I'm talking about making wise choices. And it's up to you, and you can make the wise choices. Now, there's a movie, it was about Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. And the old knight, the one who was guarding all the different cups, told those people, he says, choose wisely. That's what I'm telling you. You've got the choice right now. Choose wisely. For the parents, I want to tell you, you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware of what's going on around you. And not just what's going on right in front of you in your whole neighborhood. If you're aware of what's going around you, you're better equipped to handle this stuff. And that's all it has to be. If you talk to your children and they talk to you, you establish an open relationship with your children before you need it, not afterwards. You decide that you are going to have this open relationship with your children, but establish that before you need it, not afterwards. You know, after you work murders and rapes for a long time, there's a certain callus that builds up on you. And that callus can be as thick as you want it to be. But sometimes, some crimes, they come right through that callus. When you put your hand on the body of a dead child and you still feel the warmth from that body, there's no callus in the world that's going to cut through that, that's going to keep that out. That cuts right through, that penetrates. And that's why I do this stuff, because I'm trying to do prevention here. Well, let's do this gang thing, all right? Let's see what we can do here. You know a gang sign? You know a gang sign?
A gang sign?
You got a gang sign? Who can throw a gang sign? Let me see a gang sign. You two? How old are you? 9 years old. Let me see your sign again. You see, at 9 years old, these children are involved. There's a gang presence here. So I don't want you to think that it can't happen to you. These are children from your community, and there's the evidence that gangs are alive and well in your community. They are here. If these kids can throw the signs, then they know what's going on. The gangs are here. Now, why do the kids join the gangs? Well, there's three reasons. They don't get support at home. Another reason is intimidation, where the gang members come up and they intimidate somebody into joining the gang. And another reason they join the gang is for protection. But that protection is phony, too. They say, well, we're going to protect you from the gangs. The gangs create the problem on the street, and then they're going to protect you from it? That's BS. They are creating this thing. Gangs are no good. There's only two ways you get out of it. Well, there's three. You can get out of the gang. If you stay in the gang, there's only two ways out. You're either going to go into the joint, into the prison, or you're going to go into the graveyard. That's the two ways out of the gang.
The definite future in a gang is death. You just die either fighting or, you just get trapped or somehow you die, because that's the ultimate goal for the rival gang, to kill you.
Let's talk about how the gangs do the recruiting. When gangs have openings, when they have job openings, they have got to go recruit, because everybody knows that these are not good jobs. And gangs keep going for younger and younger people. In order for gangs to fill their slots, they've got to go to younger and younger children. Let me tell you how this gang thing works. The gang doesn't all of a sudden just step in and capture the child and take the child away, indoctrinate the child. It's a progression. It's a soft progression. The first thing they do is they give you a simple test. They will give you something that is simple for you to do. They will say, okay, look, we want you to go steal something. All I want you to do is go into that store and steal something. And then they take the next thing, and they say, look, all I want you to do, I'm going to walk up to the car, and I'm going to make the dope deal. You hold the dope, I'll hold the money. And then they get you to deliver dope, which is also a serious crime. And then they say, look, we're going to go, and we're going to take a ride by there. All I want you to do is just ride in the car. And they ride in the car, and somebody pulls out a gun, and somebody shoots somebody. And now you're involved in a shooting. It's a gradual thing. And pretty soon you're doing it. Here's what I want you to remember. When they come up to you and they say, declare, or they say, what are you about? What you can say to them, you got to, first of all, you don't lie to them. What you've got to do is you've got to be honest with them and tell them, hey, I'm not about gangs, man, and that's it. And you just get out of there. And another thing I don't want you to do is that false flagging. You tell them all the same thing. I'm not about gangs, man. I'm not in a gang. I don't belong in gangs, and you get out of there. Now, you could live in very nice neighborhoods, or you can live in poor neighborhoods. Sometimes you can see the presence of the gang, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can see the certain colors that your children will wear. Sometimes they will want to wear certain colors. Sometimes they will avoid certain colors. Either case, there's a problem here with gangs. Sometimes when you have a lad who's got a hat on, if he pushes the hat to one side, it means one thing. If he pushes it to the other side, it means another thing. These are gang symbols. This is what happens when you use your clothing to signify what gang you're in. You can tell that there's a gang presence when you see these things happening. Another thing, if you see the graffiti on the wall, you see it on your garages. If you see it on the walls of the apartment buildings or the walls of the houses, if you see the graffiti, there's a gang presence. It goes like this. When you see the fin, the shark is there. And that's as easy as you can get. They announce their presence. And what can you do about it? Well, you've got the power to make the choices. And you've got to make wise choices. You've got to make real good choices. Because if you don't make the choices, you're giving the power to make the choices into somebody else's hand. And you don't want to do that either. Let me tell you about girls in the gangs. Girls in the gangs have a different problem. They start them out the same in a progression. They'll say, okay, I want you to go in here and I want you to steal something for me. And then they get them involved in the gang and they get them hanging around with the gang and being with the gang. And then all of a sudden, we got a young lady who's now a little older. And you say to them, well, I want you to go sleep with this guy. And she says, well, no, that's not my boyfriend. I don't sleep with him. I only sleep with my boyfriend. And the guy says, hey, that's not your choice anymore. You go over there and sleep with this guy. So it's used and abused, and it's exactly what they do. They use and abuse.
From the ages of 10 to about 13, I was like a real wild kid, and I always wanted to be like fitting in and be real popular and stuff like that. And everybody was like involved in gangs, and so of course I ran right to it and I got involved too. I was really attracted to it because I had so much power. I could do anything I wanted, or at least it seemed that way. I mean, I was 12 years old and I had girls who were 15, 16 years old, a foot taller than me, like listening to what I was doing, and I could tell them anything. Now that I look back on it, I think it was stupid, and I don't understand now how people are attracted to gangs because it's not the same anymore.
A friend of mine got involved into a gang. She got involved into that gang blind-eyed. She didn't realize exactly what she was getting herself into. And she mistakenly got herself pregnant by someone who was in an opposite gang. And she then had to face the consequences. And those consequences were either for her to get punched in the stomach or for her to go out and stab someone else. And she chose to go out and stab someone else. And now she's in jail, pregnant. And what I'm trying to say is, once you're in that gang for good, and there is no turning back.
You've got to stay out. Because if you don't stay out, you're in. I mean, in is in. Let me tell you something about the gangs here. Here's a story about a girl who was at a train station. She was approached by 9 guys. 6 of these guys raped her. 9 guys went to jail. The 3 that didn't rape her went to jail too. Who won in that one? Nobody wins. Nobody ever wins. See, it's like a wolf pack. It doesn't matter if you're at the front of the wolf pack or you're at the back of the wolf pack. If you're in the wolf pack, you're in. If you're in it, you're going down.
They told me all I had to do was act as a lookout. I knew they were gonna pop a cap at this guy, but I figured we'd get away with it. And if we didn't, it was no big deal. I mean, I didn't pull the trigger or anything.
No matter what. Oh my God, he's got a gun! He's got a gun!
The cops came down hard on us, and the judge put us all away. I'm pulling damn near as much time as Frank, and he shot the guy. Man, I didn't know that. Nobody told me that. So this is where I spend my days now. Just trying to get by, you know, trying to survive. This place is tough, man, real tough. People get killed in here. Nobody told me that either. Nobody.
If you're in the wolf pack, you're in. If you're in it, you're going down. Now there's a song that the song says, I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. Now I know people that have done that. They have turned 21 in prison and they're never going to get out of jail until they die. Gangs are a dead end, a real dead end.
My friend, she was my best friend since grade school. We had known each other all our lives since kindergarten. And when we were in about 7th or 8th grade, she wanted to experiment with drugs. And at first she was like, oh, marijuana and stuff like that. But then she started on acid and she started on things a lot heavier. And she also did it much more than at first. And, you know, I knew this was getting really serious because she was changing. So I said, well, you know, I have to tell someone, and I was going to tell a teacher or something, but I decided to tell her parents. So I thought about this for a long time, and I said, yeah, I'm definitely going to tell her mom. So I told her mom. I went over to her house one day, and I told her mom, and her mom, she looked at me, and she did not believe it. She completely stopped talking to me. I was not allowed to see her anymore. And because her mom could not believe that her precious little angel would do something like this, so our relationship had to end.
I'll tell you another dead end. Drugs is a dead end. See, what we're talking about is we got drugs and we got gangs and we got involvement. Your kids have been exposed. Your kids are open to this thing. We got to do something about it. Young lady was standing on a corner. Two different groups were trying to get the drug sales on this corner. One guy came by in an automobile and he started firing a handgun. She didn't run because she wasn't involved in it. The bullet hit her in the pelvis and bounced up into her chest. They took her to a hospital, and I'm standing out there watching the doctors work on this young lady who was 16 years old, and I watched that young lady die. Now, who won there? The one guy goes to jail, and one goes to the graveyard. Who won in that one? Nobody wins. It's everybody's problem, and it's not just in the big city, it's all over the place.
About a year and a half ago, my parents moved from the city to the suburbs to escape like drugs, gangs, and all the so-called city problems, but they realized that you can't necessarily escape them just by moving to a different place. Kids there are also usually tend to have more than the average amount of money and are usually fairly bored, complaining about how there's nothing to do in the suburbs, so quite often they'll have like alcoholic fests that when parents are out of town, alcohol is a big thing to do at parties, and people are quite often drunk and stuff, and considering there's no public transportation in the suburbs, people get in drunk driving accidents a lot. My town is just constantly, any night you go out, you have to be careful for drunk drivers and stuff.
Adult communication with kids is very important. I think that would help not just the kid, but help the adult understand the problems of gangs and drugs and alcohol in the community as a whole. In the suburbs, I know that there's a problem of denial. Teachers and educators and guardians and parents don't want to believe that there's a problem of drugs, alcohol, or gangs in their family, in their community, or in their schools.
Remember when I said that there are no absolutes? Well, there are 3 absolutes. 3. Gold does not rust. Fire burns, and drugs destroy lives. Now, they just don't all of a sudden destroy their lives. What they do is they destroy your ability to make choices. It's called impairment. They impair your ability to make good choices. It's difficult for people who have not been exposed to drugs to understand what impairment is, but it's like if you took a headset, and I took a headset, and I could put this headset on this young lady, and I turned the volume up on that headset loud enough where she couldn't hear anybody else talking in the room, that would be the same as having her hearing impaired.
I had a best friend. I thought I knew everything about her, and I find out she's holding this secret back from me about her doing drugs. And I had to actually tie her hands together because she was trying to cut herself with a butter knife. She asked me to go get her a glass of water. I went downstairs and got her a glass of water. I came back because I told her I had to go to the bathroom. I came back and I gave her the glass. And after I came back from the bathroom, there was glass everywhere and she was bleeding. And I go, what happened? She goes, I cut myself. And she passed out. the next day, she asked me what happened. And that scared me because I was like, you were conscious this whole time and you don't remember what happened to yourself and how you got these cuts all over your arms. And she didn't have an idea, and I had to tell her. And now it's been maybe 4 or 5 months, and a couple of weeks ago, I just found out that she's in an insane asylum.
You can't make good choices if you're impaired. Drugs impair you. Now, you wouldn't want to put yourself in the hands of anybody who is impaired. Okay, here's 2 doctors. You know one takes drugs and you know the other one doesn't. He's going to operate on you. Which one do you want? The one who doesn't take drugs. Because you don't want to put your life in the hands of somebody who is on drugs. Well, you're responsible for your own lives. You don't want to put your life in your own hands when you take drugs either. It's the same thing. Do not take the drugs. Let's talk about normal risks, and we'll talk about big risks. Normal risk. Okay. Normal risk is when you cross the street, that's a risk that you normally take. You do your look both ways, and you walk across the street. That's a risk everybody takes. But a big risk is if you say, okay, I'm going to walk across this street blindfolded. Now, that's a risk you don't have to take. That's a big risk, and you don't need to do that. But when you're risking yourself with dope, the risks are for real. Doesn't matter if it's crack cocaine. It doesn't matter if it's marijuana. It doesn't matter if it's heroin. The dope is holding the dope. And there is no good way out of this, because when you're dead, you're dead. Dead is really dead. You got to make the right choice. And you can make the right choice.
My best friend does drugs. And as a result of doing drugs, she's dropped out of school and gotten in some kind of trouble. My parents think that I'm going to do that, but I try to prove to them that I'm not going to drop out of school or I'm not going to do drugs and alcohol just because a friend of mine does it. I'm my own person and I do what I want and I follow my own judgment. I don't do something just because somebody says, come on, Lene, it's cool.
They got him into doing stuff like selling drugs, stealing cars. He's even stolen a gun before. He's been to jail numerous amount of times. He's only 14 and I'm 15. And maybe if I would have stayed living with them, I would be in that same situation. So I'm glad that we moved away. We moved away because I got selected for a math science program, a math science magnet program. And, you know, since then I've moved higher and higher. I'm in high school now, and the only way out of this that I see is going to college and getting a better education and doing something for myself.
Now, what can we do about these gangs? The drug sellers, they're organized. If you've got them in your neighborhood, you got to be organized. You got to help one another. If you see graffiti on the wall, you got a gang presence. You've got to find some way in your community to organize against these people because they are organized against you. Friends help friends, and good friends help good friends. And you have to be good friends with one another and decide you're not going to put up with this, and you get them out of your neighborhood. Drugs is a poor choice. I've seen all this stuff. I've seen them die. I've had them die in my arms. I've seen all the death and all the prisons. But you've got the choices. You can make the right choices. If you make the choices for yourself, because you are responsible for yourselves, to yourselves, and you make the right choices.
I spent some time talking about these issues with a small group of parents, and then with a group of kids. They were very open and honest, and here is some of what they had to say.
All right, we're going to talk about gangs, we're going to talk about drugs, and we're going to talk about street safety. And the thread that brings all 3 of these together is they all need an open relationship. You have an open relationship with your children, then you have a mechanism that's in place before you need it. But you've got to have the open relationship in place before you need it. When you're building a bridge, that's not the time to stress it. So if you have a problem, that's not the time you can build a communication bridge with the people that you're trying to communicate with, your parents or the people that you trust. You've got to have that bridge in place before you put the stress on it. Otherwise, it's not going to take it. You've got to have an open relationship with your children in place before you could put the pressure on it. And when you have a stress situation, when the child has been molested, or if you have a drug problem, or if the child has been approached by a gang, or thinks it's going to be in a gang, that's not the time to try to build a relationship. You've got to have the relationship in place before you do that. You don't build the whole bridge yourself. You build a bridge with the person that you trust, whether it's your parents, or whether it's your uncle, or whether it's an older sibling, or it doesn't matter who this person is that you are building this bridge with. Having an open communication bridge with somebody is one of the best ways to keep these drugs, gangs, and personal safety issues from affecting you alone. You're allowed to share those things. And sharing is what this is all about, is helping one another. Use your influence and say, what are you doing that for, man? Why are you doing that? You don't want to wait till he's going down for the third time. It's like if you see a guy out in the water and he's starting to flounder, and you're not going to wait till he goes down the third time before you throw him the life preserver. It's just the way you got to do for one another. You have to have an open communication with your parents, and you've got to be able to take care of one another, your siblings and your friends. How about, let's talk about gangs a little bit. Anybody ever see any gang violence, first-hand gang violence? Okay, now you've had an experience. You wanna tell us about your experience with the gang?
It wasn't gun-related, but it was like physically, you know, girls fighting with girls, guys fighting with guys, and you know, whoever was there, you know, they were gonna fight.
Where did this happen, on a corner or a sports event?
Fields, school fields, and parks, you know.
Any firearms involved?
Any
Guns? No guns?
No guns.
Lucky.
Just like hammers, stuff like that.
Hammers? Were you hurt?
Me?
Did you get hit with a hammer?
No.
Did you hit anybody else with a hammer?
No.
Were there knives there?
Yeah.
Anybody get cut?
Yeah.
Badly?
Mostly, yeah.
Anybody die?
No.
How old were you?
I was 11.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, back then I felt proud, you know, I felt like I was tough, you know, I had power, you know.
What do you think about it now?
It was foolish. It's immature.
Almost any gang member that you speak to don't want to be in a gang.
They're in the gang, and they don't want to be in the gang.
You get to the root cause of it, they definitely don't want to be in a gang.
Why are they in the gang?
Peer pressure.
I was a gang member, and I rose myself to a gang leader.
How old were you when you first started?
I was 16 years old.
And then a couple of months you were a gang leader.
Exactly. Because of the respect they had for me and the respect that I gave them back. The reason I got into the gangs was pressure, family values, lacking family values.
A lack of family values. Go on.
Pressure.
Pressure? That's from your money?
Financial pressures. Love. Lack of love. The lack of education. It started as 30 gang members. Me in one of the top positions. Maybe 4 or 5 that are dead, 2 that are paralyzed in my gang, and others that had to move either out of the country or out of the city or state to get away from the gang. My own gang.
Why did you quit the gang?
All the knowledge that I acquired while being in the gang, and other people talking to me, people like yourself talking in the show, talking to us about what, giving us knowledge, because knowledge is power.
Correct.
And I went back to school, even though they didn't want me back in school, but I fought to go back to school. And I finished school. I put all that knowledge together and sorted it out and decided that because of the love for my family and the love for y'all and the love for the kids and the next generation coming up, that I would do good things to educate y'all of what I had gone through so that y'all wouldn't go through it. And that was about it.
What do you mean that's about it? That's a lot.
If I could add to this to the parents, that you gotta be there for those kids. Because if you're not there for those kids, the gang members will be there for those kids. If you're not careful, they won't be your kids anymore.
Well, see, he knows he was in the gang Now, when his son comes to him and says, Daddy, were you in a gang? And he's going to say, I was in the gang. And this is the reasons I got out. And his credibility is 100% with his son or his daughter. That's truthful. That is very, very open. And I really appreciate your openness and honesty. I know that some of the things that you say are difficult to say, and but it's truthful, and thank you for that. Let me talk about drugs. Let's talk about some drugs. Have you ever been involved with drugs? Have you ever seen anybody use drugs? Yes, you.
One time that got into drugs real bad, and they
You?
started.
You?
No, I had some friends.
Yes.
And they had started selling the drugs. And,
What drugs are we talking about here? Cocaine?
Like acid,
Acid.
X, coke. I mean, all of it. And from what I understood one night, they were going down the road, and they thought a car was chasing them. And what they was doing was going in to deliver drugs. And from what I understood, a car was chasing them, and they was trying to turn in a red light, and the car flipped. And it killed one of them. These two guys were best friends. But ever since then, it's ruined the other guy's life. I mean, he's shot up with Lysol to try and, you know, commit suicide. And, I mean, it's really ruined his life real bad.
Some of the kids' parents do it, and they think, well, if my parents do it, I can do it too.
I talked to a group of adults, and one of the things that was brought up is that this parent said, I did drugs before. I don't do them now, but I did them before. If my son asks me, do I do drugs or did I do drugs, what should I tell him?
I grew up in the 60s, and like a lot of people in my generation, I did experiment with drugs for, you know, for a good part of my youth. And one of the things that I wanted to impress on my daughter was the dangers of her doing that. And so, because I had, you know, not continued doing this into my, up to that point, it was pretty easy for me to go ahead and just try to keep rigorous honesty as sort of the basis of our relationship, and let her know, yeah, I may have done this or that, and here was the situation surrounding that, and here was what life was like, and here's what maybe the consequences were, or maybe here's what the consequences could have been, and I was very lucky. So I think the main thing, I mean, you know, you're talking about family relationships and family openness and having that bridge in place. It works that way for everything a parent is going to deal with their kids. You know, the important thing about a family is to have that closeness. And if I'm not honest about who I am, then in a sense I can never achieve that kind of closeness.
I agree.
Because if I don't tell you who I really am, you'll never know me. And if you never know me, you're not going to be that close to me.
I would tell my child straight out that I tried it before, and then I tell them what happened. I mean, I tell them the consequences I had to pay by doing it. Like, I wouldn't just tell them straight out, yes, I did, and won't just leave it like that. I explain to them what happened.
Now, see, I think that's pretty close, because here's what you want to do. You don't want your child to have to learn the same experiences that you did. It's believable, and you let the child or the sibling or whoever you're talking to understand that you are not the perfect person in the whole world, that you've fallen too. Because there is nobody that's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. It doesn't even have to be your son or your brother. You do it for your sister or your brother or somebody that you care about. It doesn't have to be your child. If you see somebody in trouble and you know you've got the answer, oh, tell them, man. You got to tell them. You really have to do that. Let's talk about something else here. Let's just change the subject. Let's talk about being approached. Has anybody ever here been approached by anybody to want to pull them into a car or wanted to offer them candy or wanted to get them into an alley?
My friend was, well, I was in the house, but she was outside. She was putting her bike up in the garage.
Yes.
We had just gone bike riding. And she, in the screen van, pulled up and goes like, my puppy is lost, can you come help me find him and get in the car with me and come help me find my puppy? And asked her to get in the car with him.
And?
But she knew it. She goes, I'm sorry, but I can't, and she ran inside.
Well, I'm sorry never would enter into it. You know, I would not say I'm sorry. But you did right by not getting in that car, and so did your friend. Your friend was, they never tried to get you in the car, it was your friend. How old was your friend?
She was in first grade.
First grade. Was that 6, 5? 6? So she's in 6th, and she is 6 years old, and she knew what to do. What do you think that guy wanted to do with her in that van? Everybody here knows what he wanted to do. And we all know that's wrong. We don't care what he wants. And I don't want you to stop and turn around and say, hey, what do you want? You get your knees in the breeze. You get out of there. These people, when they approach the children, they tell them, look, we're going to threaten. You know, the child gets threatened. It goes like, look, if you tell your daddy or you tell your mommy, I'm going to poison your whole family, or I'm going to kill your cat, or I'm going to choke your puppy dog, or I'm going to blow up your whole house. I work for the FBI, and I have a bomb, and I can do it. They're going to tell lies, but they're going to tell convincing lies, and the children are going to believe them. So you've got to have this mechanism in place that nobody can threaten you. If anybody threatens you, young man, anybody threatens you, young lady, you come to me, and I'll handle that. There's no secrets, especially when I'm talking about this street safety. I don't want any secrets. I don't want this guy who says, you know, if you tell your mommy that I touched you, you know, I'm going to hurt you. This will just be our secret, you know, just between you and me, you know, whether he's touching you or he's making you touch him or whatever fondling or whatever, whatever is going on. There is no secrets. The molestation of a child is probably one of the most devastating things that ever happens to a kid. You were molested as a child. How old were you?
4, 5.
Was it a family member?
Yes, it was.
Did you tell somebody?
I told my older sister.
And did she believe you?
She believed me, but she told me not to say nothing.
Now, did this change your life in any way, this molestation?
Yeah, it did. I started having sex at a very young age. I felt it was because of that, because in a sense, you know, I was told that this was love, so I'm looking for love, you know. It just, I think it turned me to the worst. It differs from person to person. Some people withdraw.
If your mother would have addressed that issue. Or
I spoke to my mother, and she told me never to say nothing and not to tell my father.
Would he have done something on his own? Is that what the thing was?
I don't know. My mother I just followed what my mother said. She said, don't ever say nothing to your father.
All right.
I
Now,
left it at that.
you gotta,
What went on between them
but
two.
you have established a trust relationship with your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
So if something happens, you already have this bridge in place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once that bridge is in place, it's not only just for sex; it's also for drugs and for gangs.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got that communication open. You got to be open. One of the things I stress with the adults is that you have to be open with one another. You have to be open with your children. You are stressing that to me. You know that better than the parents group did. You know that the openness is the way to go. I'm impressed.
I'd like to know what your advice would be to a teenage girl who's on a date and she's in a car and is confronted with date rape.
Date rape is one of the 3 kinds of rape. There's 3 kinds of rape. One is a date rape, one is acquaintance rape, and one is a stranger danger rape. If I'm on a date with somebody, there is a expected degree of intimacy where we are going to be alone together. We're going to dance alone together. We're going to eat together. We're going to be alone. When you're out in an acquaintance group, it's, you know, you're out with a group of your friends. You all go to a tavern or you go to a coffee shop and you sit down. You're together. There is less expectation of intimacy. And the stranger danger rape, there is absolutely no expectation of intimacy at all. But what you do is the same thing, only you do it in different places. When the man crosses the line, then you take the action. With acquaintance rape and with a date rape, he will always let you kiss him. And what I tell the young ladies to do is reach up with your little mouth and offer to kiss him. And when he kisses you back, you grab a hold of his lower lip and you bite down until your teeth meet. You're ending the relationship is what you're doing, but when it becomes a criminal act, you got to take criminal action. And that's what you do. She's defending herself. She has to be firm. If she's got to slap him, slap him. If she's got to bite him, bite him. And she'll know and he'll know and the word will get out real fast. Don't fool with her. All right, what do you think about these problems? Is there a solution that you see?
I feel it's important to tell your children that you love them, Because I know adults who have told me, I've never heard my father tell me he loves me. You know, I've never heard my mother tell me she loved me. I had to make my mother tell me she loved me. And just so that we would shut up and leave her alone, she said, okay, okay, I love you. You know, now get out of my face. Every time I see my kids, I tell them, I love you, constantly.
I think it's much like the parents and, you know, other people who have influence over the children. I think much we can do is just like talk to the kids and tell them what they need to know and tell them how to be safe and what to do and what not to do, and it'll be up to them to decide.
I don't think it has to be a parent. I mean, realistically, we don't have a mommy or a daddy in a lot of families. It doesn't have to be that. It just has to be a significant
and
adult.
also, I think also one of the things that's missing, and it doesn't have to be, but we as parents ourselves have to have a policy towards our children that says, I'm going to love you no matter what. If you mess up, because I'm not perfect, I'm a parent and I say, son, I don't know everything. I'm going to be honest with you. But the important thing is I can't lay down when I fall. I got to get up and I got to dust myself up and I got to keep going. And then the other thing is, if you mess up, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, if you kill somebody, God forbid, but I'm going to be there and I'm still going to love you and you can come to me. And I think that some of our children don't realize that, you know, our parents might feel that way towards us. And I think we have to let them know that so that they can open up to us and establish the bridge that we're all talking about.
You have a comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's a lot of ways you can start, I think. Like when you take your kid on a little trip to camp or to a game, sometimes grab a neighbor kid or someone that don't have a father, mother, one-parent kid.
Bring another kid.
A lot of times this kid is trapped into that community, never go nowhere. So he think that this is it. This is all he knows, is that surrounding. Take him out of that environment and, you know, kind of open up his mind a little bit. I think that's a start there, too.
You have a comment?
Well, sometimes as a parent of young children, it's hard to talk about things like the molestation and things like that with it, because you don't want to scare your child of everyone around. You don't want to have them, you know, thinking that everybody's a bad guy.
I think it's real important to let kids know, let young kids, real young kids know that most people are good, most people aren't ever going to hurt them, but occasionally there are going to be people that will, and that it's a real thing, but it's not something that is going on all the time. I mean, just like teaching a kid that not all cars are going to drive up over the curb, but sometimes it's going to happen, so you might not want to play on that little strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb.
That's an excellent analogy.
Because most cars are going to keep on going. One of them might not. And it's the same thing with kids. I mean, with people, is to teach them that it's essentially a very good world, but that things go wrong and people go wrong. And the best way to avoid being a victim is just to keep your eyes open and to believe in yourself. If something feels wrong, get out of there.
There's also one more issue here. As your parents have taught you to do certain things, like if this was my son and every place I went, or every place he went, if I was holding his hand, I'd never have to worry about what he's doing because I know he's with me all the time. But as you get older and you make better decisions, you go out on your own. But part of being a parent is to make sure that he's still okay. So I check on him once in a while. That doesn't mean I don't trust him. It's just part of being a parent.
Gangs, crime, and drugs. It's not a brown thing, it's not a white thing, it's not a black thing. It's a deaf thing. And it doesn't only involve us as children, as teenagers, as young men, young women. It involves our parents, our grandparents, and the next generation to come.
I feel real fortunate to be here. I'm a pretty new parent. I've got a 4-year-old and one on the way, and I feel like I've just gotten a crash course in parenting. And I think it's really going to help a lot, and I feel very fortunate to have heard all this.
This is not just a police problem. This is not just a big city problem. This is everybody's problem. Our children are the future. So talk with your kids and listen to them and get involved in your community. Together, we can beat this thing.
Street Smarts, straight talk for kids, teens, and parents with Detective J.J. Bittenbinder was made possible by the financial support of viewers like you and by Motorola, a worldwide provider of wireless data systems, computers, aerospace, and automotive electronics. At Motorola, quality means the world to us. And the Freddie Mac Foundation, committed to helping children, youth, and families by focusing attention on their needs and supporting positive solutions.